On the Full View, and one of the most prominent advocates for gender equality is South Africa's former Deputy President. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka is now the Executive Director at UN Women. She's been there for the past 6 years at the helm, and she joins us live from the United States tonight. Ms. Mlambo-Ngcuka, thank you so much. Welcome. So good to chat to you from South Africa. You've spoken recently about this turning point in the world in 1995 where countries came together and took action about women being underrepresented in leadership positions in whole sectors. Can we start with an overall assessment? What has been the world's progress or lack of progress since then?
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening and happy Women's Day to the women and girls in South Africa and all the men who are doing the heavy lifting in support for gender equality. We have made progress in the world since the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action in 1995. We have seen in most countries of the world progress in girls' education and retaining girls at school, and we're even seeing now in many parts of the world girls graduating in even larger numbers than boys. We have seen women taking senior positions and leading, but not in the kinds of numbers that women need to be leading. We've also seen progress in the changing of the laws in different parts of the world, including some of the worst laws, such as the laws that are lenient to rapists, but we still have a long way to go. We have been able to show what women can do, what the world can look like if it has gender equality, and now we need to fast track the journey. We need to scale up the change, because every time we move slow, we then reel back. Pace and scale is critical for this change to be meaningful.
So you're talking about the changes in law. We're seeing finally women in Saudi Arabia starting to drive, for example. You know, do we still see discrimination anywhere?
Women need more than driving.
Sure, I'm just saying, is there discrimination codified in law still in parts of the world?
Definitely. There are about 2.5 billion women in the world who live in jurisdiction where 75% of their rights are not being realized in law and in reality. And part of the work that we are doing now, ourselves, UN Women and many other partners, is to actually comb the whole world, addressing nation by nation, parliament by parliament, about these laws that are still in their statutes. It is our aim that by 2023, we would have at least in 100 countries brought about changes and law reforms that will remove these laws that are offending in the statutes of these countries. In addition to that, we're supporting countries who must pass laws that are enabling gender equality. South Africa also has a few laws that it still has to address that are discriminatory. But I would say South Africa is one of the low-hanging fruits, because these laws are so few and there is political will to bring about change. So we are working actively with the relevant department and ministries to address this in the context of South Africa.
Can you give us examples?
Customary law in South Africa still need to be synchronized with the Constitution. The age of marriage, even though the child protection policy and act in South Africa makes it illegal for a child to marry under the age of 18, in some customary setting and traditional settings, children are actually being married off at an earlier age. There's a custom of ukutwala, which is as good as child marriage, because it happens with the blessing of the community and the parents. So that is a big challenge that we are addressing together with the different ministries and civil society.
So thank you for bringing up South Africa, and let's return to South Africa. But first, just to end off with the state of inequality or equality in the world. I guess beyond the laws, there's cultural inequality, structural inequality. You've spoken about how families are constituted. Goal 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals set down for 2030 is achieving gender equality. Do you believe that is achievable?
It is achievable only if we change the way we act and the pace of engagement. The fact that today we have SDGs that were adopted by all the member states demonstrate that there is possibility and that there is goodwill. And let me just highlight for you what is in Goal 5, because Goal 5 addresses universal challenges that every country has got to work on. And each one of the areas enshrined in Goal 5 are actually areas where we can make progress. Ending violence against women. Men can do something about that. It is on the shoulders of many men to actually take, all men, let me say, to take action on that. And it is encouraging that you are actually seeing men who are taking a stand on issues of violence against women. Every country has a police force whose duty is to protect, prevent, and prosecute crimes against women. This duty is not being performed at the level at which it has to be performed. All countries can do something about this. So violence against women is universal. Parity and representation of women is a universal challenge. There isn't a single country in the world that has done justice to this issue. The issue of the burden of care that falls disproportionately on women, where countries where there isn't parental leave, where there isn't paternity leave, even when it exists, when it is not being used adequately, where motherhood stops many women from participating fully in the market economy. That is a change that every country can do something about. Unequal pay for work of equal value is a problem, global. It happens in every country. Every country can do something about this. And of course, the stereotypes and the norms that discriminate against women, these exist in every country, and they stop us from progressing in every way, because where these stereotypes are entrenched, the culture of discrimination just becomes a norm. Those who have the privilege, who then discriminate because of the privilege, don't even know that they have this privilege, because sometimes, privilege is not obvious to those who have it. So if you put all of these things together, ending violence, parity, the burden of care, stereotypes and norms, all of these things are not rocket science. Every and any country, including my beloved South Africa, can make significant change. And that will be game-changing in terms of systemic and long-lasting change.
Can I pick out one of the hardest and most horrid issues there, violence against women? South Africa is certainly struggling. Stats SA said last year that the murder rate for women increased by more than 100% between 2015 and 2017. Is that just alarming news for you from your
home country? And the prosecution rate is not increasing.
Yeah,
and the prosecution rate is not increasing, and the conviction rate is not increasing. These people who murder women, who commit crimes against women, tend to become repeat offenders, and they do it because they can. There isn't an effective justice mechanism that are actually deterring them from committing the crime. And that is why we have decided at UN Women to focus in most of the countries and our partners on the issue of making the criminal justice work for women. There's many other things to do, but this is the one constant failure that enables and emboldens the offenders to do it without fear and to do it with impunity, because they know there isn't consequences for bad behavior.
Yeah.
So if there was the one thing, if I were to choose, that needs to be given due attention, better investment, in something that we as UN Women are able and willing to be partners in every country, it is making our police and law enforcement institution work better for women.
Are you willing to talk?
And we pay for them, by the way.
Yeah.
This is us, the taxpayers, This is us, the taxpayers, who make this institution exist. So we want to get our return from these institutions.
Are you willing to talk about the role of leadership? I see you have been critical of the Jacob Zuma presidency. We saw women defending him even before there was a result in the rape trial. Do you think there's been a political leadership problem in South Africa, and is it getting better?
In every country where there has been progress on gender equality, there has been significant leadership. There has been zero tolerance for any violation of rights of women, zero tolerance to any crimes against women. When the leadership does not set the tone, chances are that the ordinary people who often look up to their leaders begin to perpetuate the culture that discriminates against women because no one is setting a standard for them. So a big fat yes. Leadership is critical for us to make progress in the small and in a big way. And leadership is not just about the president. It is leadership of corporations who must make sure that as employers, you don't tolerate sexual harassment, that you make sure that there's parity in your institution. You may be a principal in a school. You may be a leader in an NGO, because all of these crimes against women happen everywhere. So wherever there's people gathered together and someone is a leader, that person has to demonstrate the standards that everyone in that institution must abide with.
So my final question, South Africa has great representation, especially in the public sector, women in cabinet, women in parliament, but the former speaker of parliament saying we're not psychologically ready yet for a female president. Can you tell me what you think of a statement like that? And some would even ask, would you ever make yourself available if there was a race for the first female president in South Africa?
I think that was a slip of a tongue. I don't think she meant that. We are so ready, and I think I can convince her that we are, and I think she is very ready herself. And I think all of us as women and people of South Africa must be willing to do whatever we can in order to take the country forward. That question has not arisen with me at this point in time, but the people of South Africa are ready, have always been ready for a woman. I think the speaker, that was a slip of his tongue.
All right, thank you very much. And that was the Executive Director of UN Women and South Africa's former Deputy President, of course, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. Now, let's move on to other news. Public Relations graduate Zozibini Tunzi has been tonight crowned Miss South